When it comes to our own dreams and our practical plans to get there, we find that sometimes we build a whole idea in our head of how things should work out. It can be these very ideas that are holding us back from moving forward. I'm Catherine Berardi, and welcome to this week's episode of the Chief of Staff Collective podcast. Libby Moore trusts that the universe will take care of her, as long as she is aware enough to listen, even if that means changing the plans that she set out for her life. In her most stressful situations, Libby takes time to sit, listen, and focus on her breath. For her, breathing is the bridge between the chaos and the calm. This mindset has carried Libby on an incredible journey in her life, allowing her to avoid becoming stagnant and instead focus on continuous growth. Here's part 2 with Caroline Pugh, where you'll learn how Libby Moore found success as Oprah's chief of staff, and in her personal life as well.
I have this conversation with chiefs of staff all the time when they first get into the role and they have never worked with that person before. And especially if that person is a high-profile CEO or celebrity or whoever it is, where they have such a complex life with so many moving spheres. The question is, how do you gain their trust? Because you are now in this position where you are overseeing so many different aspects of their lives and are managing how all of those may intertwine. And so how do you get to a point where an Oprah would feel like you know exactly what needs to happen?
Well, number one, it takes time. And if the person is intelligent, right? So they've gotten to that level. So they know it's going to take time. You're not supposed to come in and know everything. So I really feel like 6 months to a year, once you've done all the seasons, the 4 seasons and the full year cycle, then you have a better understanding of who the person is, who all the major players are, and how everything works. So for me, and again, remember, I had never managed anyone prior to taking that job. So I was stepping in. I think at the time, I don't remember. I mean, it was December 4th, 2000 was my first day on the job. And at the time, I believe there were 3 assistants, or maybe I think there were 3. And then over a period of years, there were 5 assistants. So I was managing a team of 5 assistants. And the only person I had ever managed in my entire life was Maury's driver. When I was his personal assistant, he had a woman who was his driver, and that was my job, was to supervise her. And we were friends. It was great. So it wasn't really like a big, I'm managing you, So I did not have a lot of experience. And so I really leaned into those 3 assistants. There was one woman, Angelique McFarland, who had been there many years prior to me coming in. Mm-hmm. So she was a wealth of knowledge. And then soon after I came in, I hired 2 more people. Yeah, actually 2, and then ultimately 3. So it was really the assistants, the team. We were a team. The 11 years that I was there, I could not have done it for 3 months without this team. I didn't have the skills that this team had. So one, with their combined knowledge, so in particular Angelique, because she knew all the family members and the major players at the companies and everything. I really leaned on her to bring me up to speed. And then hired people for the positions, when those positions opened on the team, that were excellent at their job. I would say to the director of HR, if someone's really good, I do not want to see their resume. If you meet someone and they're a rock star, that's who I want to interview. Because there's millions of really good people. But Miss Winfrey, I always called her Miss Winfrey when we were working together. You know her, you know what would work in her executive office, and you know all the people, the players on our team, on Oprah's team. So if you feel like this person's a rock star, those are the people that I want to interview. So it was really like getting the upper echelon of executive assistants, and I hired people that were better than me in any position that I was placing there. I wanted them to be smarter, better, everything, because that's what makes a great team. And really allowing them to do their job. I was a macro manager. I had to learn how to delegate because I'd never done it before. So it was really trial and error, making mistakes. With Oprah, it was, I made a lot of mistakes, and I would say, in the beginning, I said so many times, I'm so sorry, it won't happen again. I apologize, it won't happen again. Right. I actually got sick and tired of hearing myself say that. And I'm sure she did too. And one time on the phone, she called me and said, there was this, whatever the issue was. Right. And I said, I'm sorry, I'm not perfect. In this really kind of like childlike manner. And she said, Libby, I don't expect you to be perfect. I expect you to do your best. That's it. Just do your best. And that was such a great piece of advice because one, that's what I passed on to my team. Don't try to be perfect. Just do your best. And I got it. Something clicked in me. I was trying so hard to be perfect that I was almost setting myself up for failure in a lot of ways. The stress, the extra stress that I was creating and placing on myself.
Now, you were in this role for 11 years.
Specifically, I have to say it was 10 years from very beginning to very end. It was like 10 years and 9 months.
Wow.
10 years and 8 months. Yeah.
And, I find that a lot of chiefs of staff or anybody that goes into a role that they are very passionate about, there is a question of how do I gain more responsibility? How do I make sure that this is something that I am always learning something new, where I feel like I am truly, everybody wants to feel like they're growing in their lives. If you could just kind of take us through how that evolution happened for you during that 10 years and 9 months of growing with Oprah yourself, all the things that you learned and the new responsibilities, because you were managing so many different aspects of her life from, everything that was going on with OWN to maybe even some of her personal life things that were so important to her that you only knew and maybe other people didn't know. So how did you grow in that aspect?
Well, I will say, I need to clarify that because I think so many people think, what does the chief of staff do? By no means was I overseeing all of her business ventures. I was her key liaison that people would filter through. But she was having direct meetings, obviously, with the head of the foundation and OWN, and by no means was I overseeing the launch of OWN and things like that. It was really, I was her key liaison, and the team and myself, it was our job to make sure that her entire universe, professional and personal, was in sync. I used to call it Oprah International Airport. And our job was to make sure all the planes were taking off on time and landing on time, and if there's a fire in Terminal 3, my job to get it out, make sure it doesn't happen again, all that kind of stuff. And in that role of chief of staff, you really need to know a little bit of everything. Some things more of a deep dive on other things, but you need to be in the know on a lot of things. I think I've completely lost track of your question.
I was asking about the growing.
How I would grow.
Yes.
For me, it was simply being on the job and asking questions and observing. I mean, I didn't have time to take, I think I'm going to take a Harvard Business School online on how to manage people. No. I barely had time to have dinner, so it was purely being on the job, again, trying things, making mistakes, trying things, being successful, trying things, making mistakes, trying things, being successful, asking the team, how should we do this better? How can we do this better? Watching Oprah, observing her, how she worked in business, in meetings, being a sponge, taking all that in. So that was really my development, I would say.
Yeah. And
really, again, leaning into the team of assistants that made up our executive team who were really good. And, in the beginning, for example, this is some of the ways of growing. It's so simple. It's meat and potatoes, really. It doesn't have to be so complicated. I remember the first day that I came in, and I believe I shadowed her. I think it was even before I got the job. I'm not sure, but I came in, and there's a certain period of time that's called hair and makeup prior to her doing the show. And the first question I asked her on the first day or when I was shadowing, I said, what are the top 3 things that any of your assistants from the past, what are the top 3 things from any of those people, you don't have to say their names, the top 3 things they did that you love, that really stand out in your mind? I love it when this person did this, or I thought this person was excellent at that. What are those top 3 things that you absolutely love and helped your life? And what are the top 3 things that you could not stand, that bug the bugs out of you. You cannot stand it.
Right.
And she told me those 3 things. And one of the 3 things that bugged her was when people would chase her down the hall and ask questions, because she's so busy, it was hard to get in front of her. She couldn't even just walk to the cafe to get a tea or something without someone saying, hey, what do you want to do? And she just thought, oh my God, I don't want to be attacked with questions every time I go from my office to somewhere. So my team and I set up this plan where when she's in hair and makeup, I would come in and I would brief her every morning. And she would give me any info she wanted to give to me. Like, I want this done or that done, or I want to talk to this person today, or this must go out today, blah, blah, blah. So I'd take all those notes. And then we had a document of the most important questions. There was always the top 3, which were the hot ones. Like, if you can get these 3 questions answered in a briefing, our day can move along really well. And then I would just keep going through all the questions until I felt like, okay, she's done. Energetically, I could tell she's fried, or she doesn't want to do any more, and she needs to conserve her energy for the show. So that was a good thing that we had going.
Right.
And then I would come out of the briefing, call my whole team into my office, and share everything that was discussed, delegate everything that needed to be done. And again, I was a macro manager, so it's like, go nuts, do your thing. If you have questions, let me know. Because they were really, really good at what they did. That was like a learning thing on the run.
And let's talk about disagreements, because I remember you distinctly saying that you did not have a lot of moments where you and Oprah would necessarily argue about making some sort of decision or thing. If there were any moments of conflict, it would be around a person and trusting that that person maybe had the right intentions or were the right fit, et cetera, et cetera. And I find that chiefs of staff, or really anybody who's working with their boss on such a close level, it can get very complicated, to kind of form that argument of saying, I know this to be the truth. I really do not think this is in your best interest to pursue this or to talk to this person or whatever the thing is. And so how did you deal with those moments, and how did they end up resolving themselves?
I want to say this goes back to your question of how do you create that relationship with the principal, the boss, the manager, right? How do you create that trusting relationship? You asked that earlier. And this is a great question for that. You tell the truth. You be honest. And when they say, what is your opinion? You give your honest opinion without emotions. That's something I learned in hindsight, because I would get very passionate about something. And had I just delivered the facts, I think it would have come across in a different way than being so passionate about it. So in 11 years, I believe there were probably 3 main occasions that all had to do with people that we disagreed. That I said, this is my belief. This is, what I believe about this situation. And she disagreed. And even when she would take counsel or take in other people's, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think, from her inner circle and her inner circle about maybe whether it's a business decision or a person or something like that. And of course, she's getting all this intel from different people that she trusts. Now, in some cases, everybody was like, yes, I agree with you. And in one particular case, I felt like that's not what I feel. And it was very hard to stand in what I believe to be the truth against someone who is so powerful and intelligent, and her energy is very, big and dominating and powerful. And you've got the entire company and all the executives, or in general, saying that they believed a certain way. And I just felt like, well, I'm not going to just go with, just say, yeah, you're right, if I don't feel that way. And I always stood in my truth. And sometimes it was very uncomfortable, but always it came back to a point where she could see, even if Libby and I disagree, she's going to tell me the truth. I know that I can trust that Libby's going to tell me the truth. And there were a couple times where I thought to myself, you know what, she might fire me over this. Like, we're really head to head on this situation. But if I'm not going to cave just because it feels uncomfortable, or if it's what, she or other people, executives, think is the way to go. If this is my belief, I'm going to stand in my belief. And everything I would look at through 3 filters. Is this in Oprah's best interest? Is this in the company's best interest? And is this in the brand's best interest? Mm-hmm. In that order. Mm-hmm. And as a chief of staff, as my main responsibility is to take care of her and protect her and, filter information in and out. Only the most important, not, tainting any of it. Just like, what is the most important thing she needs to know? And that was the filter. Is this in her best interest? And if you're on the production team and ratings is your responsibility, and you could do a show and get amazing ratings, and that's great for the numbers and it's great for advertising dollars, but is that great? I would always look at it for, okay, that's good for the show, but is that in Oprah's best interest or the company, or the brand? Right. Those are my filters. Again, it's about telling the truth. And if you're working with someone and you tell the truth consistently, they're really going to trust you. Right. And if they go, yeah, you're fired, then fine. You're supposed to be working somewhere else. I mean, if I'm sure there's some people out there who are working with principals or owners of companies or CEOs, and they just want yes people around them. Yes. That was not Oprah, thank God. But those CEOs and those executives who just want yes people around them, that ship has a hole in it, and it eventually is going down. I've seen it over and over and over again. I like the way that you described it. It's detrimental to the business, for sure.
So how does one leave a life with Oprah? Which I'm sure is a question that you get all the time. You have the dream job, right? Everybody wants this opportunity. And like with anything else, it runs its course, I guess. And so maybe you can kind of describe to us when you knew, speaking of the truth, when you knew that it was true that you had to move on.
When Oprah announced that the show was ending in 2 years, so the show ended May 2011. So in, I think, May 2009, she made the announcement, we're doing 2 more years and that's it. And May 2011 will be the end of the Oprah Winfrey Show after 25 years. So there was this 2-year runway. And a couple months after that announcement, I said to her, look, I am with you in this role. I'm going to help you transition from the show into the own network. Mm-hmm. Living in Chicago, moving out to California, I'm going to help you transition, and I want you to feel really comfortable. And once you feel comfortable, because it's going to be a big change for you, then it is time for me to move on from this role. And let me be clear, I want to stay in your Oprah universe in some capacity. I just can't do it in the chief of staff executive assistant role because I am fried. I am burnt. It'll be almost 11 years by the time the show ends. And I feel like if I don't get off this pace, now I'm going to get sick. I really didn't feel like that. It just felt unsustainable. And she said, I get it. The average time in a role like this would be 4 years, 4 or 5 years. It'll be 11 at that point. We've got 2 years. Let's figure out what that next role was. And I said, and if we can't figure it out, then to me, that's just the universe saying, okay, Libby, you need to go out and share this experience in another form. But let me be clear, I want to stay with you. I don't want to leave your Oprah universe. Who would want to leave the Oprah universe? And 2 years went by, and eventually things that, she offered were amazing, but I didn't want to be a TV network executive in LA. That's just not my vibe. And things that I suggested, she was like, well, that sounds like a friend, And I didn't really do a lot of planning. Like I know some people, because I've coached a lot of chief of staffs and EAs, and they have the documents, and this is what it would look like, and this is right. I mean, I just kind of like off the top of my head was like, well, what about I do this? It wasn't very thought out or planned well at all. And ultimately, I would say, I was helping the team that created Super Soul Sunday and had been working on that as things were winding down. And then we had hired Amy Weinblum, who's phenomenal, her chief of staff from New York. So Amy came in and I trained her for about 4 months before I stepped out officially. And eventually I was really like saying, okay, praying, meditating, journaling, praying, like, show me what to do. Am I supposed to stay or go? Am I supposed to stay or go? And eventually it was clear to me that it's time to go. It's really time to go. So then that's what I did. I decided to move on. And that was very hard for both of us, I believe, because we had such a fantastic connection and working relationship and friendship, and I adore her. And right. I really left and felt like, wow, this is one of the hardest things I've ever done. But there was something in me and my gut saying, you need to go out and do something else. You need to share this in another form. And at the time I thought, what am I going to do? I really thought, I do not ever want to be a chief of staff or an assistant. I don't want to manage anybody's life. I don't want to be in entertainment. Like, I've been to the mountaintop. I felt like I've worked with Oprah Winfrey for almost 11 years. I mean, there's nothing that interests me, not the White House, not one high profile person or business leader. There's no one that I thought I would rather work with than her. And I've done that. So what do I do next? And at 45, I took this leap of faith into the unknown and took a year off and called it the Libby Moore Gypsy Tour, 365 days following my heart, and just hoped and prayed that by the end of it, I would figure out what to do next. But it was not an easy decision. I want to be very clear. It was very hard for me.
Yeah, I want to say that when I have these conversations with chiefs of staff that are saying, I've been in this role for 4 or 5 years, I don't know when is the right time to leave, because I do presumably have the perfect role and I do presumably have it all good and I could do this for another 5 years if I really wanted to. And that conversation, I liken it to the conversation that maybe a lot of entrepreneurs have when they first start their companies, when they're like, is this the right time? Do I have the right idea? When is the right moment? And people always have these questions. And I think at the end of the day, what I've personally learned is that there is no specific right time, that if you feel like you said, that this is honestly what you need to do for yourself, then you need to go ahead and make that leap. So I really appreciate you sharing that process, because it is so difficult, because it feels so risky in that moment. And then you feel like right after you've left, because the whole universe now is like, well, now what's Libby going to do? She was Oprah's chief of staff for 11 years. What's she going to do next? And so, the pressures of that and your peers and the outside world just looking in on you can be even more difficult to deal with, everything else too.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to say, one, at the time, it was January 2012 when I left, and I made a very conscious decision. I had not been on any social media at that point. Nothing. And I made a conscious decision that for the entire year in 2012, I would not be on any social media, not Facebook, not LinkedIn, not Instagram, nothing. And I remember this guy that I respect very much, who was an executive working with Oprah, and he said, Libby, first of all, you cannot take a year off. Maybe 6 months, maybe 3 months, even better, but not a year. People will forget about you. You cannot take a year off. And I said, well, thank you for saying that. Then I will take a year off, because number one, I need it. I'm fried. I'm burnt. I need to reconnect with myself, with my friends, with my partner, with my family. I need this, number one. Number two, if people forget about me, then I'm not supposed to be working with them or collaborating with them, or, hanging out with them, whatever the case may be. So I'm going to let this happen organically. Whoever is around after a year is around, and whoever isn't, I'm going to trust the universe, has my best interest in mind, and I'm supposed to go in a different direction. So that was one. Another person said, Libby, I know you don't like social media. You must be on Facebook. In order to be successful, everybody has to be on Facebook. Now, this was January 2012. And I said, thank you for saying that. I'm not going to be on Facebook, because I believe that you can be successful without being on Facebook. Those were just intuitive reactions that I had. And I'm so grateful that I did it, because sure enough, 4 years later, people are saying, I hate Facebook. I can't stand it. It's so toxic. But I just keep my account to keep up with my friends and family pictures. That's it. But otherwise, I get off. I feel bad. I feel bad about myself. So I've never been on Facebook. And again, that shows you how quickly things turn. One day it's, if you want to be a successful entrepreneur, a successful CEO, you must do this. And then the next 3 minutes later, it's like, ew, yuck, my grandparents are on Facebook. Why would I want to do that? So that's, and then also started this whole experiment I've done the past 7 years, which is challenging what people say you have to do. Right. And I found by doing the opposite, I'm just so much better off. Yeah. I'm freer. I feel healthier. Yeah. It's incredible. Yeah.
I feel a lot of that too, where in some ways, even just being a female, people want to put you in a box, and people want to put a label on that box. And I think knowing for yourself that it's okay if you don't fit in any certain box, and that maybe it's actually better for you not to be in a singular box, but that you're trailblazing your own path and journey that's so different from maybe what 99% of the rest of the world is doing, may be the better option for you, which is kind of what you're doing now, which is helping a lot of people with the knowledge and experience of what you've had over the last, so many years of experience. So just describe to us a little bit about what type of work you're doing now and how people might be able to engage with you. Because I can imagine that a lot of chiefs of staff listening to this are just wondering how they can get more knowledge out of Libby Moore.
The main things that I'm doing right now would be coaching. So I do executive coaching, life coaching, professional coaching, personal coaching, whatever you want to call it. At the core, it's all the same thing. So some people call me their executive coach and some people call me their life coach. It depends on what their angle is. So I've been doing that. I got my certification through Martha Beck Life Coach Training. She's someone who had been on the Oprah show many times and writes for O Magazine. I respect her very much. Started coaching in 2013, about 5 years ago. When I moved to New York and back to New York from LA in 2014, something in me said, only do coaching on the phone. So when I started meeting people, I would say I only do phone coaching, and that's been incredible because it's opened up my client base to be international and all over the country. It doesn't matter if they're traveling, if I'm traveling, all of my coaching is done on the phone. And people say, well, how can you do that? And I say, because we are working heart to heart, energy to energy. I do not need to read your facial expressions to understand what's really going on. And to feel your energy, I can read it. I mean, we're all energy beings at the core. So coaching, I started doing a lot of personal and life coaching. And then I moved into more executive coaching. And that's been anywhere from EVPs at companies to CEOs to founders to chiefs of staffs, executive assistants, a little bit of everybody. And then about 2 years ago, because as you know, I get up and meditate for 20 minutes every morning. I go into intentional thought, prayer, journaling. There's a whole process that I have that I absolutely love. And one of the things I started asking 2 years ago is, how do you coach a company as if it's one individual? This question kept popping up because I thought, okay, so a company will hire me, pay really good money to coach 2 or 3 of their very high-level executives. And usually these are people who are very good at the job, but maybe they're toxic, or they're like, oh, we need to get this person an executive coach. Or on the occasion, people are like, I want to grow, and so I'd like a coach. But in a lot of cases, you're assigned to someone. And you can see them changing and progressing and developing, yet I kept thinking, how much does that trickle down to their team or ripple out to the rest of the company? It really doesn't. So in meditation, I kept asking, how do you do this? How do you do this? And to make a very long story short, what came out of it is something that I call LoveX Global. It's LoveX Coaching, LOVE to the X power. And the idea is when you teach people, you remind them how to get back to, I call it B2B, not business to business, but back to basics. When you teach them how to get back to the basics, which is A, loving yourself, respecting yourself, how do you take care of yourself first? And to be conscious aware of how their thoughts are affecting not only themselves, but those around them, meaning their partner, their kids. And then you come into the workplace and that however you're thinking about yourself and your environment is rippling out to everyone without you even saying a word. When you can teach people and remind them how to manage their thoughts for a more positive, better outcome, starting with themselves, you bring that love energy into the workplace. Not only do you transform each individual's life, but you transform the company from the inside out. So LOVE coaching, LoveX is to the X power, meaning if you have 3 people doing it, that's powerful. If you have 30, 300 people doing it, that can transform an entire company, which transforms people's community, the state, their country, the world. That's how you transform the world. You start with yourself. And people are so busy, they're like, what do I do? It's really simple exercises. And I always say to people, I'm not teaching you anything new. I'm reminding you what you already know that's gotten lost in the chaos and swirl of life. LoveX, that's LoveX Energy. It's really for companies that are pioneering and interested in doing something different, something that's different from traditional coaching. And I usually go in and do a talk And then I go into an office and I do speed coaching with individuals 2 days straight. And it's 25-minute sessions. When they leave, I have 5 minutes and the next person comes in. And you're teaching every single person these simple exercises, and they do it in their own life. And that's what I'm really excited about today. So it's coaching and then speaking engagements, which I absolutely love, and I've done all over the world. And it's sharing my experience, my life experience, my professional experience, and how those two interweave to create a better life. And we all have that potential.
And I just had one last question on the coaching piece, because similarly to therapy, there can be, I found that there is a stigma to it where, like you were even saying before, it's like this person needs coaching and it's more of a reactionary tool versus a proactionary, maybe coaching or this type of exercise would be able to help us collectively as a team or as an individual to get ahead of the complex world that we live in. We know things are going to happen along the way. Maybe if we receive this type of coaching, we would be able to work much more efficiently and cohesively together. And so how do you kind of explain the benefits or what coaching actually is versus maybe what the stigma behind it is today?
Well, to me, it's kind of interesting because for a long time, I was resistant to the term coaching, but I didn't know what else to call it. Yeah. It's something I've done my whole life. Started as a little kid, did it with my friends. Then I would be the person at work that people would come to with problems and issues, and every place I've ever worked. And then I thought, well, I might as well get certified to do this and learn more tools and how do you do it in certain ways. So I got certified. And what I realized is it's not a bad thing at all. It's about reflecting people who they are. It's showing them who they are and showing them their potential. And when they're triggered, we all are human beings. We all get triggered by stuff. Every single person who comes to us, I'm having this issue with this person at work. It's actually helping them heal something from their past. And you can boom, 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 ask some quick questions that will quickly take them back to where that started. And then, okay, well, you're not 13 right now or 15. This isn't your mom or dad. But we play out those dynamics at work. I mean, it's amazing. Every single person does. And when you show them these simple exercises to do to course correct, to create these new neural pathways, even the deep breath and slow exhale. For people that are a hothead or get triggered and just yell and scream, they don't want to, but maybe their mom, they grew up and their mom or dad was a screamer. So that's just what was modeled for them. So that's how they just boom, that's their default. But when they're aware of that and they understand, oh, I wasn't born that way. That's what was modeled for me. That's not really who I am. They can do these simple exercises like a deep breath and a slow exhale, which is the bridge between chaos and calm. It'll buy you time, seconds to think, okay, I'm not going to scream right now. And then by the time you do the second deep breath and slow exhale, you're totally calmed down. And by the third one, you either say, I'm going to step outside, and you take a walk around the block, or something comes through you and you say something that is like a totally different thing than you would have screamed 3 seconds ago. Because you're in alignment with your higher self, your higher intelligence. So you're speaking from that place after the third deep breath and slow exhale. Does that answer the question?
Yes. It made me, at least, visualize what that type of exercise can actually do for someone. So I will wrap this amazing conversation with one last question, which is, what would you now tell your 25-year-old self, knowing what you know now?
I would say, number one, I love you so much. You're such an incredible person. You can come out and people will love you. This is not a death sentence. This is a life sentence where you get to live, really live your life and be the person that you've always meant to be. You don't have to hide. People are just going to love you, number one. And number two, I would say the more you are yourself, your authentic, unique, special self, the more people will gravitate to you, the more your career will rise, the happier you'll be. You'll give off an entirely different energy. People will want to work with you and collaborate with you and be your friend, be your partner. It's so interesting. That's what I would tell myself. It's about loving myself. I would say low self-worth and low self-esteem has always been my hurdle. And I believe that is specifically due to feeling like if people know I'm gay, then I won't be accepted, or I won't get that job, or people won't like me, or people think I'm gross. when you grow up with that big secret, you also are developing this low self-esteem, this low self-worth. So that's, I believe, why I went into the line of this work, working with people and coaching with them, because I know what that feels like. And it manifests in different ways for different people. But at the core, most people feel like, I can't be myself, or they have abandonment issues or low self-esteem, low self-worth. And it's just not true. So I like reflecting back to people who they truly are, and have them walk in their life from that space, in their full self, their authentic self, their higher self. That's my passion.
Libby, I will say every conversation that I have with you, I always learn something new. Even if you had said something you had said before, the way in which that you say it and the reminder, sometimes you need a reminder in life, and the calm and the peacefulness and the energy that you bring to any conversation is always an amazing feeling. I feel like, now I have so much energy going into the day.
Thank you.
So I thank you for sharing so much of your story and being so honest about it. I know it'll be really beneficial for anybody listening. And thank you for all the work that you're doing, sharing your experiences and teaching others how they can live their true lives and reach their true potentials. It's truly a service to everybody. So I'm so excited for other chiefs of staff to get to know you and to hopefully work with you. And where can people reach you today? What is the best way to get a hold of Libby Moore?
My website is libbymoore.com. My email is libby@libbymoore.com. And I am on LinkedIn, and the only other social media I'm on is actually Instagram, which is Libby Moore Gypsy Tour. So, and that's it. So either of those is good. And thank you for having me on. I have enjoyed this so much. I feel so grateful that we met, and I appreciate this. Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Chief of Staff Collective podcast. You can hear us on your favorite podcast app every other Monday. Make sure you subscribe, rate, and review so you don't miss an episode.